many of you may know my son Matthew Carberry. He's the president, and he's the guy that actually runs and builds the operation day to day. So this is an invitation to visit us in the hatchery today. I'm going to tell you what we do and a lot of how we do it. You'll probably hear more about the breeding of fish than you've heard from most producers. SA is about 7 or 8 years old. It's 55,000 square feet with 50 employees. We probably have about 300,000 fish on campus. It's 6 buildings. And we're deeply committed to breeding fish as well as to handling wild fish. So we do both wild fish and breeding fish. This is our friend Nemo. We breed 86 varieties of clownfish. When we started the business, we set out for a goal of 100% yield, and our yield on eggs is closer to 100% than 99%. And as a result of that, we're able to produce these 86 varieties of clownfish with a very small number of broodstock. We only have, including the 25 new longfin pairs, 240 pairs of broodstock for clownfish. We do a lot of designer clownfish. One thing about the designer clownfish is that most of them exist in the wild. In the wild, when you come to an anemone, you'll find a dominant pair in residence. The female is the larger dominant member of the pair, but there'll often be as many as a couple dozen juveniles in attendance. And these juveniles in attendance are almost always male. So for instance, we've had a male jump out of a tank when a female was getting ready to spawn, and we'll just go to a tank and pull out a juvenile and put them in, and we'll get a good spawn. So we know for that reason that they're males. We know for other reasons as well. This is a fish that's a mutation. We didn't do it on purpose. It was a fancy Ocellaris pair that we think we had sold somewhere between 25 and 30,000 fish from them. And then this variant showed up, so it's a mutation. And in F1, it bred out, this one male with a female bred out about 12% long fins, and we paired up 15 long fins and 10 hybrids. And so we're hoping to introduce about 3,000 fish a month for MACNA next year in production. This is a poster. I've donated about 100 posters that the club is selling, and it describes all of the fish and the families that we breed. Now, this is a pair. Aquatic Specialist was kind of the first mail order company in the trade. They were in Knoxville, J.R. Shute and John Tulloch. J.R. Shute is still doing fish. He does studies with endangered species in Smokies for environmental impact studies, and we're still close to him. So this is a pair we bought from him in 1998. They've been breeding for 14 years. They're still very healthy. Here you can see they're eggs are about a day away from hatching. So you can see the eyes. This was Matthew's Rarity room for rotifers in 2004, and we support hobby breeding, so we bond pairs and sell pairs and more or less make it transparently available. But this is how small it started, so anybody who starts small could end up getting very big. This is Matthew's first larval grow out. It's in a closet. You'll notice that there's a German on-demand water heater over there that cost me $1,800. I had to do that because Matthew said he didn't have room for my big water heater. So I came home one day and he had ordered that and I paid for it because he needed room for these. This is the broodstock in my workshop. That's my workbench. So I lost the workbench for a while, and that's where he kept his first broodstock. All of those pairs we just checked recently are in our broodstock today. So in the breeding of clownfish and tangs and angels, these are very long-lived fish. They can live 35 years or so. This is the facility that we have now. We started building out the production facility in 2007. As I said, it's currently 55,000 square feet with just about 50 employees. The facilities are fairly large, but a lot of systems. So we have about 140 systems. What you see there is a larval system on the left. There's 2 systems there. And then you can see the edge of a grow-out system. We grow the fish out in 120-gallon tanks, and we do the larval in 15-gallon tanks. This is an overview of what we call the annex. There's about 125,000 fish on any given day. There's 10 systems down the middle, and there's 14 systems around the perimeter of the wall. We have some big shipping days. On this particular day, we shipped about 240 boxes. We think we put UPS on their knees that day. We ship, when you're in the business, you ship or you transport water overnight for a living. On the right there, you can see a grow-out system that's grow-out M. It's 120-gallon tanks and 60-gallon tanks in one system. Tennessee may seem a strange place, but we believe we could not do what we do if we were using natural seawater. It's near people, so it's usually polluted, contaminated, and variable. So we're isolated from saltwater pathogens, and we make our own water. We're in a good place because we're not that far in Tennessee away from UPS and Federal Express, and we're very close to Atlanta. We export about 40% of our production to the rest of the world. And we run a truck down to Atlanta 2 or 3 times a week and go direct or one stop almost any place in the world. Everything's indoors. We have no artificial sunlight. Everything is air conditioned. We would be better off up here. We air condition 365 days a year. Even when it was 11 degrees last week, we were air conditioning. This is a glass aquarium. These are black clarky clownfish. These are black ground tubs. In general, we can breed black ocellaris in glass tanks, but almost everything else we do in tubs. Matthew calls them black ground tubs. So this is a black ground tub, and here you can see we're culturing some clownfish. We often culture clownfish in a new system just to get it done. The clownfish are pretty easy, and we're trying to do some things that are much, much harder. What are the considerations for this? Water quality is important. We watch the ammonia level very closely, and the thing when you're breeding fish to remember is that the ammonia is being generated not just by the fish but by the live feeds. We had a failure last week. We had 300 blue tangs in a tub very, very close to metamorphosis. They were developing very quickly, and they died overnight. And the reason was that we were having to put in so many copepods to feed them that we had an ammonia spike. So now we know we have to have a much bigger header tank and a big flow through to protect from ammonia. And of course, egg collection and nutrition and so forth. This is a picture of a water station. We have 3 stations like this. That system is a spectrum system. It puts out 2,800 gallons a day. We use right now about 3 tons of salt a week. So about 12 tons a month. This is something that's very interesting. We make this and sell it. It's a patent that expired from Marineland, but they won't sell it unless you buy a Mars system or a system such as a pet shop like Petco buy. And the patent was expired, and it's kind of magic. The bacteria you want to process your ammonia and your nitrites is Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter. And the best version of these are aerobic. And even fish systems need to be buffered because the bacteria uses a lot of the buffer minerals and elements. So in this case, the biowheel turns, and you're able to maintain very, very large quantities of the bacteria. We are putting about 400 of these into our systems this year, and we sell them. So if you're breeding fish, or if you have a pet store, or if you have a big fish system, you can buy this from your local retailer, and we sell it at a very reasonable price. We view it as something that's important for the hobby. It makes that big a difference. And so we couldn't buy it from Marineland. The patent was expired. I met a friend earlier who said that he was working with SolidWorks. So these drawings were made with SolidWorks, and that's an exploded view of the design that we made for that. UV is very important, especially in breeding larval fish. So we tend to put the fish on drift right away, and we put them on recirculation as quickly as possible. And very strong UV and keeping up to date on replacement of the bulbs. And of course, we do a lot of water testing. Feeding is important. We make most all the food ourselves, and most of the foods that you find on the shelves are cooked. A company called Buehler in Switzerland makes what's called a thermal extruder that's used on almost all fish foods. And it processes at a temperature that denatures the fatty acids and the antioxidants. And that makes it a poor fish food. So we couldn't do what we do without the foods we make. I'm going to talk a little bit more about rotifers and copepods, but we make a gel food. The main ingredient of the gel food is cow hearts. There's 5 key amino acids that are critical for the liver to have available to make vitellogenin, VTG, which is the precursor for yolk. And these 5 amino acids are non-essential. In other words, the fish makes it, but it can't make enough of it during spawning time. So the cow heart, the mammalian heart, is largely uninvolved, and your heart doesn't work on glucose, it works on enzymes and amino acids. Otherwise, when you got hungry, you die. So we use the cow heart as a main ingredient in our brood stock. And then, of course, we have the hatchery feed, where we use pharmaceutical-grade cod liver oil, very high-quality astaxanthin and other materials, which we nano-encapsulate to keep them from going rancid. And it tastes very good, and it's what we grow the fish up on. The fish are fed 3 times a day, and when they see people, when you walk around the hatchery, the fish are constantly coming up, because most of the time when they see you, they're going to get fed. So this is a learned behavior, and the fish that we sell, both the wild fish and the hatchery fish, are trained to eat. They have to learn this. So even the hatchery-bred fish, when you transition them from live feeds to dry feeds, you have to teach them to do that. It takes like about a week for clownfish. As I mentioned, this is the gel-based food. So you can see there up in the upper right, there's the gel, the heart that's been ground up. Rotifers are a big deal. A lot of rotifers cultures that people have been contaminated with fungus and other things that make them unhealthy. A couple of years ago, we commissioned a study and a development with Terry Snell down at Georgia Tech, and we learned how to isolate the eggs of the rotifer and sterilize them, and put them into stasis in freezers. And so all of the rotifers we have now, and we harvest about 250 million rotifers a day. All of those rotifers were sterilized at Georgia Tech through a sterilization and resting process, and then amplified from there, and they're kept in clean rooms. So they're free of all the contaminants that we found other suppliers were giving to us. That was a big deal for us. 11 out of the 14 cod hatcheries in Norway would have business because of this problem. And the problem they have is they take the brood stock in the spring, and they have one shot at it. So if their rotifer culture crashes a week or 2 weeks into the season, then they wait for next year. There's an enrichment facility. Artemia, we also feed Artemia. We don't like Artemia too much. We only feed them when they're 3 days old, 1, 2, 3 day old Artemia. They have appendages that can be really harmful to baby fish, so we also don't use them until they're much older. And over time, I think we'll be using them less and less. Here you can see the beautiful appendages that in an older Artemia can really do damage to a young fish. In 2011, I acquired DTs from Dennis Taggart, who now works for us as one of our leaders. And the reason I purchased this wasn't so I could sell DT algae, although we sell it. It was because I had in mind a major production facility for zooplankton and phytoplankton. This facility is now 3,000 square feet. It includes 128 bags that are 2 meters tall and a foot in diameter. It includes a clean room. We're doing advanced work now with astaxanthin. We think we've developed a process for making very high purity, high yield astaxanthin, so that's a major development going on now. But mostly we're developing and producing algae for our copepods. So one of the things that's interesting about larval fish is that their gastrointestinal system doesn't develop for a long time. So one of the problems people are having in trying to raise tangs is that they think they're eating the animals and digesting the animals, and this just isn't true. We've looked at these fish during their life cycle, and we found that, for instance, the yellow tang and the blue tang doesn't start producing peptic or hydrochloric acid until it's well over 30 days old. That means it cannot digest proteins. We've also studied the copepod, and he digests all his food in 20 minutes. And a full copepod has 60 nanograms of partially digested food in his gut, and that's what the baby fish lives on. So the number of copepods they need is enormous. So we're working with Parvo calanus, which is a very popular one. Most people who have bred successfully, for instance, angels, have complained that they couldn't go into production because they didn't have enough volume of copepods. The baby fish eat napli. They have about a 21-day life cycle, and the napli are only the fish that are small. The copepods are small for the first 2 or 3 days. So if we harvest right now 10 million copepods a day, we're only getting 500,000 napli to feed to the baby tangs and baby angels. So this is a big deal. Now, the picture you saw here was green water. The algae we make is not centrifuged. It's clarified. We remove the nitrates and the phosphates, and we concentrate it. And that means when we put it in the water with the fish, the water quality actually improves because the algae is hungry and it's motile, it swims around, and it starts consuming CO2 and eating phosphates and nitrates. So when you put it in without any nitrates or phosphates or without any CO2, when it goes into the fish water, it actually improves it, and that's a key component to being successful in breeding fish, especially tangs. So the algae production allows us to bring in together the live algae, and the copepods are fussy eaters. They don't like frozen algae or broken algae or even algae that's been refrigerated. This copepod production is allowing us to have a breakthrough in what we call copepod fish, or tubfish. These are dottybacks and blennies and gobies and tangs and angels. So we're seeing huge decreases in the time to metamorphosis in clownfish, dottybacks, gobies, and blennies, and tangs because of the nutrition. Matthew put this up, and I personally don't really think the indigo dottyback is such a beautiful fish. And I think you're basically taking 2 really nice fish and making one that's not nice enough, but we sell a lot of them. Here's an egg tumbler and incubator. The tumbler is on the right in the background, and I'm going to show you some pictures of marine betas. I think we're probably the first to go into long-term large production of marine betas, and we use the egg tumbler for those. These are blennies. Some of the fish are endemic. For instance, the canary blenny is only found in Fiji, so making them in large volume requires some breeding. Here's a hardtail. That's a batch. That was 780 fish. That was one batch. This is a striped fang blenny, and you can see the eggs in the tube. That's how we collect them. We just switch the tubes out. This is the eggs that you can see there, and we put them on a stand post and bubble water air over them. This is the Molly Miller. His eggs are kind of purple blue. Britt Talbot took this picture when he visited us. The Molly Miller is kind of neat because he eats detritus, but he'll also eat small aptasia. So we've documented that they'll clean up aptasia. And then gobies, the neon goby is a big one. It's popular. It's caught in the Caribbean, but it's seasonal. So we're going into production of several thousand a month right now of these, aided by the copepods and the algae. This is a picture Matthew took with a neon goby on his hand, and when he let it go, this lionfish down in Puerto Rico came and ate it. Okay, that's not a good thing. This is a tube set up for the neon gobies. Here's a watchman goby. This is clinkfish. Matt Wittenrich suggested that we breed this. He asked us to breed them. We sell them. They breed like crazy. They escape into the sumps, and this is what they look like on the window. And they get into the sumps and they breed successfully. And they're getting the overflow from whatever feed we have. And Matthew says that if you all remember the Star Trek Trouble with Tribbles, he thinks these guys are tribbles because we end up with them all over the place. We bred chromis. I'll just take a minute to say what do we breed. So for instance, we're trying to breed right now in a very accelerated program the blue tang because Finding Dory's coming out next year, and that'll increase the demand for dories. And they're not collected so sustainably. When you try to catch them, they hide in corals. And the two favorite tools for collecting them is cyanide and hammers. So we like to replace a lot of the live wild caught with tank. So if a fish is caught in deep water, it's a candidate because diver safety is an issue. If it's over collected, or if it's politically thought to be over collected, it's a candidate. The yellow tang is an example. If it's collected unsustainably, the blue tang I think is such an example. It's a candidate. We'd love to breed chromis, but they're collected in such large volume at low price that we could never supply them at a price that would be profitable. So part of the problem in breeding is what's your market and what's your justification. These are fish we bred. Here's the marine beta, and I think these pictures are a little bit unusual. There's a batch of about 400 per spawn, about twice a month, and you can see here that there's the parent, there's the egg tumbler, and these are the juveniles. So a lot of people haven't seen this, but they have this white body when they're born, and so you're seeing something that's fairly rare. Not many people have bred them in volume, and we do it twice a month. And this is what they look like. There's two on the raffle. You can see up there two of our fish. Another problem in breeding is how long does it take for the fish to become mature? So this fish up here are about 16 months old, and they're 2 inches long. So you have to invest a lot of money to breed them, and then to keep them long enough to make them sellable. So a 16-month-old fish has been around for a while. We bred fairly large quantities of Bengal cardinals and pajama cardinals, and here I just want to speak to the breeders again. We did a test where we put wild-caught Bengais and wild-caught pajamas on our price list alongside hatchery bred. And we started off selling them for 50 cents more a fish. And we sold all the wild-caught, and the 50-cent premium on the hatchery resulted in no sale of hatchery bred fish. So then we went 25 cents, and we still didn't sell any hatchery bred fish. And then we went even, and then we sold equal. And then we had the hatchery bred 25 cents less, and then they sold out and the wild ones didn't. Now, I wanted to say a word about Petco today. Petco is our largest customer. And Petco have evolved, in my view, enormously in the past several years. No one supports us in our breeding initiatives more than Petco. No one. No one is willing to pay a premium for hatchery-bred fish like Petco is. They are diplomats of the highest order these days. And I believe they're doing the right thing, not because they're afraid, but because they decided that this is how you do things. So my hat's off to Petco. We ship to them in all 50 states. And they look at the business they give us as a way of funding our advanced research and breeding. So I have the highest appreciation for them. And we compete with them in our pet store. We have a pet store in Knoxville. It's a laboratory for us. We compete with them. And it's a really friendly competition. If their people need help, they come to us. But when they have a customer that's advancing to advanced corals, to advanced fish and reef systems, they send them to us. So we're partners. And I think that's the best way to approach the whole thing of the market. So anyway, that's the story about the cardinals. So one of the problems here, and I go back to the chromis, is that we're probably not going to make a huge success out of breeding unless we learn to do it at a price and a cost that gives the consumer and the retailer an advantage. Okay? In 1968, one of the most important articles or philosophies was presented by a guy named Hardin, Tragedy of the Commons. He basically argued that unregulated commons are always destroyed by men, doing the simple short-term thing. I don't think we can change human nature in time to save the world. So what we have to do is offer positive, superior, short-term, simple options that save the world. I'm personally working on thermoelectric technology that would cut CO2 in half by increasing the yield on energy. Our yield on energy is 25%. 68% is lost as waste heat. We could probably reduce CO2 best by increasing the yield and thereby reducing the cost. People will go for that, and they won't do it to reduce CO2, but they'll reduce CO2 by making that choice. So that's how we have to handle it in the world. So one of the things SA is worried about is if we breed tangs, can we breed them at a cost that make them more attractive than a wild caught? And that we think that's critical. Here's some cardinals also. We breed some sharks. and it's a curiosity. We probably sell about 8 sharks that we breed a month. We're doing the epaulet shark. It's a tough one from Australia. Here you can see 3 pups that are getting ready for sale. The jawfish is an interesting fish, and they're a little bit smarter than cardinals. So like the Bangkok cardinals are mouth breeders, so they hold the eggs. The male holds the eggs in his mouth, and if you try to pair them up, you'll get 1 or 2 spawns successfully, and then usually on the 3rd or 4th spawn, the female will kill the male. And the reason is because she's trying to give him eggs and he won't take them. And the reason he won't take them is he's starving to death. Now the jawfish has figured this out. So this jawfish in this picture has a mouthful of eggs, and we fed him. And you can see he's eating, and the eggs are just floating. So he releases the egg mass, eats it, and then takes the egg mass back up. So if the Bangkok could learn that, they would be a lot better off as a species. We breed peppermint shrimp. There's several variants of peppermint shrimp. Only one of them eats aptasia. We breed that one. And I love these larvae. They look like spacemen. So you'll have a tank with 600 or 800 in a batch, floating around like spacemen like that, and then they settle out and they become peppermint shrimp, like this. Now, aptasia is a big deal, and there's several ways of dealing with aptasia. And peppermint are a great way. If you look at the picture in the upper left, you see a lot of aptasia there. Can everybody see the aptasia there? And we put in several peppermint shrimp. I think about a dozen. And if you look at the lower right, you see the aptasia's gone 3 days later.
If you want, and they come in their
okay, so that's kind of a good thing. Bergia is another way, but the Bergia will explode by reproducing. They'll eat them. There won't be any food and they'll die. All they use is aptasia. So Bergia can knock it down, but then you need to keep something there to keep it down. And the options are things like butterflies, which are tough. They mostly come from the Philippines. They're called cyanide. Or something like the Molly Miller blending, or peppermint shrimp. So that's kind of an aptasia primer. We've done camel shrimp, sexy shrimp, and here's the Bergia. One of the most strange things in the world. So to breed the tanks, I had to set up 3,000 square feet of phytoplankton production, 2,000 feet of copepod production for a tiny effort to breed tanks. If you want to make Bergia, anybody that want to make Bergia, please understand that we produce about 3,000 Bergia a month, and the Bergia production facility is about 8 inches wide and 9 feet long. Okay, the aptasia facility is about 18 feet wide and 20 feet long. Okay, so if you want to go into the business of breeding Bergia, you first have to go into the business of growing aptasia. That's an aptasia working in one of our broodstock systems that got an out-of-control breakout of aptasia. You might say, how could you get aptasia in your broodstock? We bring in fish that are quarantined all the time, but it's amazing how they'll come through when you think you've done everything right. We do wild fish, and we call it Sustainable Islands because we try to partner with the people. We look at the wild fish as being cyanide-free is a big deal. Our government estimates 90% of the fish caught in the Philippines are caught with cyanide. My records in trying to qualify suppliers there says yes, that's true. The same in Bali, Indonesia. Places that are really good on cyanide are East Africa, Kenya, Madagascar is very good. Hawaii is pretty clean. The Caribbean is pretty clean. Fiji, Tonga, Solomon Islands. These places are all pretty clean. The problem areas are the Ring of Fire. Sodium cyanide is used to extract gold and silver from rock. And the Philippines, for instance, produces 40 tons of gold and 40 tons of silver a year. So there's a lot of cyanide there. The live fish market, of which we're part, is today about 1.2 billion, and we're 200 million. The other billion is live fish for restaurants. Coral trout, groupers, humphead wrasse. And these wild fish are caught and put in restaurants for selection by the patron. But the Chinese especially are very, very superstitious, so they don't want to eat a fish that was stupid enough to get caught by a hook. So they'd rather eat a cyanide-caught fish than a stupid fish. So virtually all the restaurant fish in Asia that you see in this are caught with cyanide. This is the facility, 6,000 square feet. It's separate. It's across the parking lot, so it's biosecure from the hatchery. This is what the SA wildfish looks like. And you'll notice that what's different about this is a lot of big tanks. So we typically keep the fish for 3 to 6 weeks, and sometimes for 3 or 4 months. And they need big tanks with big water flow. So the standard tank for the large community fish is 120 gallons. Once again, Petco supports us this on a regular basis. Petco management and I will sit down and we'll pick out a couple of fish, and we'll get large quantities when they spawn in the wild. We'll get the post-larval juveniles. We'll bring them in and grow them up over 3 or 4 months. This past September, we supplied several thousand engineer gobies that were grown out like this, and several thousand blue tangs that were grown out like this for Petco. So they're very supportive of this, and they'd rather see us breed them. So I already covered that. Blue tangs, we've been getting post-larval and raising them. They're pretty social fish. We put them in a 120-gallon tank. We can put 600 or 700 120-gallon tank, and from say a half inch of size, they'll grow out to 2 inches in about 4 or 5 weeks. They grow very fast in the hatchery feed. Yellow tangs are a little bit more psycho. So there we've learned we're going to have to grow them out in 6-foot diameter or more tubs with an island in the middle and circular flow, so they think they're in the surf. So yellow tangs are not so happy with small tanks. So this is kind of coming to the end. This is our broodstock of yellow tangs. These fish today have been in the hatchery under our development for 2.5 years. Their tank is about 10 feet deep and 6 feet in diameter. They need the vertical height to dance their spawning dance. They're spawning on the full moon. So every full moon we have spawns for 2 or 3 days. These are post-larval that we grew out to see how it worked. They weren't so happy there. This is the entire broodstock. They're all about 9 inches diameter now. So they're actually bigger than they report that they're supposed to get. So if you go to live aquarium, they won't tell you they get to be 9 inches. We're approaching 9, 9.5, and 10 inches. They're fat. They're really big. Now, we're learning a lot in our industry that's going to be very valuable to the food fish business. So what we do here is going to be valuable to a larger picture in the world. So for instance, broodstock is a big deal in the wild too. A yellow tang will start spawning when it's 2 years old at about 75 millimeters, about 3 inches diameter. And it'll make a couple of 100 eggs every full moon. When it's 4 or 5 years old, and it's this big, it'll make 20,000 eggs 2 or 3 days a month. So it'll go from like 600 to 60,000 eggs. So one of the things we're learning is that we have to protect the broodstock in the wild. So taking large breeding fish from the wild in any large volume is a really bad idea. This is the blue tangs. Our blue tangs are spawning every month on the full moon. They're 12 to 14 inches big now. We've grown them up from post-larval. They've been eating our fish. They're very fat. They're very happy. This is their tank. We try to make them as comfortable as possible. Tangs like to wedge in rocks and sleep at night. And if they have that, they're comfortable. The major predator of baby tangs is eels, who come and pull them out of the rocks at night. That's the major source of their predation. Matthew can hardly restrain himself. So here you see breeding skates in the blue tang tank, and we also put in a pair of majestic angels, which are now spawning. So we're hoping to do majestic angels. I think that'd be a nice, cute, small fish. This is the top of the tanks. We have the net over the top because when they do the spawning dens, they often clear the surface. And how did we learn that? Well, we watched it one night. We were sitting there and a blue tang came 3 feet out of the water and landed on concrete. He died. 12 feet is too far to fall. This is the egg collector. It's pretty standard stuff. It's a pail with an overflow and a 100 micron mesh. Now this is the interesting stuff. This is right from our labs. This is a yellow tang egg, and it's about 800 microns in diameter. And what you can see here is the yolk. This is the yolk right here, and this is the fish forming up. Now when this fish is fertilized like this, it's in the evening. The next morning, when the sun comes out, the eggs look like this. So that happens overnight. Okay? Now, 3 or 4 hours later, they hatch, and this is a fish that is maybe 18 hours after fertilization. But look carefully, and you'll see that it has no eyes, it has no heart, it has no endocrinal system, it has no gastrointestinal system, it has no mouth or eyes or spinal cord. That's not a fish. It's a yolk with something growing on it. This is a blue tang larva developing. This fish is 2 days old, and you can see it still doesn't really have a mouth and it still doesn't have eyes, but it has a yolk. Okay. And here it is at 6 days, and now it has a mouth, a pretty big mouth. It has a very big eye, and you can see that it has an alimentary tract, and it can probably start to eat copepods and absorb the amino acids and enzymes in the copepod's stomach. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'm pleased to answer them. But I thank you for inviting me to your meeting and to welcoming me. Thank you very much.